Welcome to this episode of Wealth Coherence. I am so thrilled to get to welcome Deborah Goldstein, a dear friend and fellow colleague in the space of advising families and inheritors around giving and their wealth coherence, like what matters to them in terms of their life and their money and their resources, and having that sense of really being fulfilled from the inside, no matter what, and then having that well-being that really is what wealth is all about. We are going to have a great conversation about parenting and weaving values into the conversation around money with children, young children under the age of 10. Because Deborah's been sharing with me her journey with her young son, and I've been so impressed by her approach and her clarity that I was hoping you'd be able to tell some stories with us about your first experience of bringing in your values related to money and financial decisions with your son. That would be a great place to kind of get this conversation started, because you have been so intentional about this.
Well, let me start by saying it hasn't been easy. It's a challenge, and I'll just, before I get to a story, I'll say it's a challenge because I myself, like everyone else, I have my own money stories, right? And so my son is constantly, pushing those buttons, right? As our kids are so good at doing. And so it's been really good to have that reflection for me to take time to think about, like, why am I thinking this right, in this moment? And what came to mind was last year we went on vacation to San Diego. And the highlight of the trip for him and for me, because I'd never been, was Legoland. And I'd been to San Diego as a kid. I had fond memories. And so in my mind, it was like, I want to do some of the same things with my son that I did as a kid. So I was thinking, like, how do we do all these different things? And I made a list in advance of everything from free options to, Legoland, which was the most expensive thing we were going to do. And I said, you help me decide. You help create the itinerary for this time. And so we did that. And Legoland, I decided we had a place we were staying in San Diego, but because Legoland it's not that far away, but I wanted him to have the whole experience. So we did a night. We stayed in the Legoland hotel, and we went, we got there. Yes, we got there the night before. We went into the park the next day. I just wanted it to be like 24 hours of magic, right? So we had talked about saving money for the trip. He had sold his bicycle earlier in the year. I'd put it in my high yield savings account. It was just a few months, so it didn't earn much interest. But we talked through those things, like, if you don't spend this money now from the bicycle, you can save that up and use it on our vacation. And you could maybe get a cool set at Legoland that you can't get anywhere else. And then he had a budget for himself. So I sort of matched that money. So he had a budget for spending. And when we got there, we had our time. We got into the park early. And then I said, we need to check out of the room and put our stuff in storage, and we'll come back to the park. And he wanted to buy his set then. And I said, well, let's wait until the end of the day to buy the set, and we'll take it back to San Diego. And no, we wanted to buy the set then. And okay, we'll buy the set then. And then he really wanted to start building the set then. And I'm like, but we're here at Legoland, don't you want to experience Legoland? And we eventually went back, he built a little bit, he built a few packets, and then we went back in and we had lunch. We did some more things that he really enjoyed doing. And then he really just wanted to hang out in the lobby of Legoland, because we had no room to go back to anymore, and build the set. And we ended up spending 3 or 4 hours in the lobby, and he was building this set. And in my mind, these things are going through my mind. We're not getting the most out of our money. This is not what I paid for, like these things. And I just had to keep kind of recentering and realizing this part of the trip is not for me. It's for my son. And if this is what he wants to be doing, then I need to just relax and let go of these money stories, at least in this moment, and be like, I mean, of course kids love to build Legos. So like, of course he's going to not want to delay that Lego building of this new set, the largest set he'd ever built. He was excited about it. And so it really tested my limits as a parent in that moment to just let him lead and let go of any thoughts around the money.
Wow, that is such a powerful story. And it says so much about expectations of ourselves, of our kids, of experiences, and what gets in the way of us being in the moment and truing to the value of more than anything else, like your love of your son and enjoyment of his enjoyment of what he was doing, and having that kind of supersede all these other thoughts and feelings from the past and all of that. And he's going to have an amazing memory of that experience, that it just looked a lot different than what you thought it was going to be. That's
Yes.
is such a great story. I love that it's so funny because you ask a question, you never know where it's going to go, and that had everything to do with you and your experience and your stories about money. Um, you would share with me a story with him that I thought was really fabulous in terms of something that he was really desirous of right in the moment. He really wanted something in the moment, and he really wanted to go and buy it right then in that moment. And the place he wanted to buy it was something that you had a value about whether you would buy it from or not, and how you would go about it. If you could kind of share that story, because there's so much about your values that are wrapped up into it.
Yeah. Well, this was a more recent example, and my son had played badminton at school, and he really loved it. And I was kind of excited about that because I love badminton too. And so he wanted to get a badminton set. And we happened to be driving a ways to a basketball game. And so we passed, I don't know if I can name the store, but
Well, it's part of your value system. It's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
I mean, it's not, we're not casting aspersions on the store. It's
Right,
more,
right,
this is
right.
your
So
values based on
we were
some
driving
decisions.
by Target, and I have shopped at Target less and less over the years, just kind of because there's other stores where I find those things. But when Target decided to retract their DEI policies, that really bothered me. And it was kind of easy, because I had been shopping there less over the years, to just say, I'm not going to shop there anymore. And so we passed a Target, and my son said, can we stop there on the way home and get a badminton set? And so I thought, well, let's talk about why I don't want to shop there anymore. And so we had this conversation around DEI. What does it mean? Why is this my choice? And then we passed another store where we could potentially get it. It originally was a family-owned local business, and I grew up going there. It always had the tagline, I don't even know if they still have this, but one-stop shopping. It was like a Target, like a local Target sort of. And he still wanted to shop there, and I said, you know what? Let me see if I can get a badminton set through Buy Nothing. And if people aren't familiar with Buy Nothing, they have their own app now, but usually there are hyper localized Facebook groups for Buy Nothing. And you can essentially post things on there that you are no longer using. And other people in your community will say, hey, I'll take that off your hands. I'm getting into bread making. I want your bread making machine, or whatever it is. Also knowing the rapid cycle through which my son and many kids
His
go
interest.
through their interests, I thought,
Yeah.
I don't need to buy this new. Like, there is probably another family that bought this in the exact same instance. And okay,
Yeah.
so he was very disappointed that I was delaying this gratification, right? I
Well,
mean, kids
mhm.
want this instantaneously. I even there's another store called Play It Again Sports, and they are like a consignment store for old sports equipment. And I thought, well, here's another way, because Buy Nothing didn't pan out. The Play It Again guy said, the sets are usually so inexpensive that we don't get them here. I was like, okay, fine. So, but my son really was questioning, why? Like, we can afford this. Why are you why are you going through these hoops essentially and delaying my gratification? And I said, even if we had all the money in the world, I would still do that because that's important to me to not always buy new. Like there are things that it makes sense to buy new, and there are things that are perfectly good buying used. And this is one of those things that I think is good enough to buy used. I eventually bought a new set. It wasn't that expensive. The birdies, of course, broke very quickly. We're still playing. We still play from time to time, but there were all these other layers, and that was also part of the conversation. Is like, when you ask me to buy something, that is all that you have in your mind at that moment, is that one thing that you really, really want. I am holding our overall budget, our overall expenses for the month, for the year, what's coming up, what we're going to be spending money on, what we've spent money on. Like, I'm the person holding all of that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And so I'm weighing your needs and wants in the moment. And we also talked about what needs and wants are
Mm-hmm.
against all these other things.
That's so good to have him understand that there's a global conversation around it.